It is all in the attitude. The attitude is the key for assimilation of this knowledge. It is also described in the Upanishad of the way of approaching a teacher. That is also again and again reiterated. Kaivalya Upanishad uses the word upasametya. The Mundaka Upanishad, tad vijnanartham, sagurumeva bhigachet. All these words, these verbs indicate a certain method of approaching as well. And this is again a traditionally done. Of course, these days it is not done, but traditional, it's interesting to know how Vedanta Shastra was taught in those ancient times in the Gurukulas. It is not just being physically in the proximity of the teacher, approaching the teacher and being in the proximity of teacher need not necessarily be physically always with the teacher. It is physical proximity is the superficial meaning. For a while, definitely physical proximity is recommended because in the living in the Gurukula Vasa, in that particular atmosphere, one comes to know even the actions of the Gurus become teaching. Even the words of the Gurus become teaching, how they interact with the public. Everything becomes teaching as well. So physical proximity is important, but emotionally, approach means emotionally one develops a connection. And it is that connection which is born out of the teaching that eventually blesses the student. It helps the seeker, it helps the student. It is not for emotional bondage, but it is order for the student to discover emotional freedom. Any emotional connection developed means there is a higher chance of the teaching to settle with you. You see, the teachers we had in school as well, I've said this before, the subjects you excelled at, have a look at the subjects you excelled at. You must have loved the teacher in some way. It is always a connection to the teacher that helps you absorb the subject. So this attitude with which one comes to this knowledge is very traditional. There's a prescribed manner also said in the Upanishad. How is that? It is tadvijnanartham sagurumeva bhigachet samit panihi shrotriyam brahmanishtam. In Mundaka Upanishad that is said. In ancient times, the students used to go with wooden twigs in their hand. These are special wooden twigs called samit. And these wooden twigs were to be used in the Agni, the Karya, the fire rituals that the teacher does on a day-to-day basis, with sacrificial fire. And these dry twigs were actually worthless. It is not the twigs. It is a symbolism of the twigs. What does it mean? The dry twigs and sticks signify the egoic self and its brood, kama, krodha, lobha. We saw that. The dry twigs symbolize that. And you are prepared when you go to the teacher with these dry twigs. What do you tell in this way of approach? You are prepared to throw your ego into the fire of knowledge, which is lit by the teacher, so it may burn brighter. So you actually hand over your ego to the teacher by these twigs. It's very symbolic, very interesting. Even now, to this day, some of our swamis, very traditional swamis, they have, I know Puja Swamiji, Dayananda Saraswati was approached by many of his students like this, in this way, with this dry twigs. So that student with that type of approach is ready. He says to the Guru, not overtly, doesn't have to say overtly, even with the way he approaches, the Guru understands, I am ready to wait as long as is necessary for the Guru's grace in the form of teaching to flow. And in the meanwhile, he occupies himself with the seva in the Gurukulam or the seva in the ashram. So the teaching was not given immediately in those times. There's a very interesting story to illustrate this in the Chandogya Upanishad between Indra, Lord Indra, and Virochana. Virochana was the lord of the Asuras, and Indra was the lord of the Devas. And once Prajapati, Prajapati we saw that he's the creator of all of them, all the different types of beings. Prajapati, the creator of the universe, he was teaching very loudly, practicing his speech, his Atma Vidya speech in front of everybody, praising the self. And he was saying loudly, like in Hyde Park Corner, stand on the box. He was proclaiming to the Jagat, the self is without papa. The self is free from all demerits. It is ageless, it is deathless. It has no sorrow. It has no hunger. It has no thirst. It is that self which should be sought after. That alone is what one should seek to know. And the one who seeks to know the self and gets to know the self gains everything in all the worlds, gets all his or her desires fulfilled at once in one shot. Both the Devas and the Asuras heard this big speech, and they were very, very happy to hear it. They said, all the desires satisfied in one shot. We got to go for this. What is this that he's talking about? So both of them thought, we must know this Atma, this self. Let us seek self-knowledge because it promises all the worlds. So they had a lot of greed, actually. They were after the worlds. They were after the desires. That was the main reason they were going, because what was the palam of the knowledge? He said, you gain everything in all the worlds and get all your desires fulfilled in one shot. They did not understand that when you understand the truth of yourself, desire itself vanishes. There's no desire left for anything. You are totally purnam, fullness, completeness yourself. Where is the question of desiring for anything outside yourself? So anyway, the Indra, the king of the gods, and Virochana, the leader of the demons, approached Prajapati, their father, and with all humility of a disciple in the traditional manner, with the summit, the dry twigs, they requested him to impart the knowledge to them. They wanted to know. So Prajapati accepted them as his disciples, and he asked them to stay with him for 32 years. 32 years they waited there. Both Indra and Virochana stayed with Prajapati, living the life of brahmacharya. And at the end of that period, Prajapati called all of them. He had not taught them. They were just doing seva in the ashram, 32 years. This Upanishad is highlighting, how long it takes to get the knowledge, to prepare. And at the end of the period, Prajapati calls them and says, dear ones, this is his teaching. The person visible in the pupil of the eye is Atma. That Atma is Brahman, timeless consciousness, the truth of this universe. Go and see yourself in a water body and then report back to me what you see. So this was the teaching. After 32 years, that's all he got. So next day, when Prajapati asked both of them to narrate their experiences, what did they say? They both said, Lord, we saw the self entirely as we know. The physical body, the head, the hair, that is what they said. To cut it short, it's a longer story, but to cut it short, he says, very good. This is Atma, the immortal, fearless Brahman. He confirms it to them. So they're both very happy. 32 years, they got the teaching and they got it. So both Indra and Virochana go off happily and very much satisfied in their heart. Prajapati saw them going away and he thought to himself, whether Deva or Asura, let us see if they are satisfied with the reflection of reality I've taught. Let us see. So again, it's a test. He wanted to see whether they're satisfied. If so, anyone who believes what I have said will be subject to death, decay, and destruction. So he's actually not given them full knowledge. He's testing now. Virochana, of course, the Asura, the king of the Asura, he goes to the demons and he teaches them this knowledge that he has learned. Whatever you see in the pupil of your eye is Atma. That is you. That is the self. So what his teaching was, the body is Atma, the self. Body is all that you need to know. Enjoy, live for pleasure. That is why Asuras are called Asusu Ramate iti Asuraha, those who revel in sense pleasures, who live just hedonistic lifestyle, just for pleasure, which is 90% of the Jagat actually. This is Asuric type of life. We have one life, that's it. Let us enjoy, like the Charvaka philosophy. Yavad jivet, sukham jivet. As long as you live happily. Rinam kritva, gritam pibet. Make lots of loans and debts and mortgages. Don't worry, but keep borrowing and enjoying yourself. And drink lots of ghee. That means, again, enjoy, indulge. Because basmi bhutasya dehasya. If your body is burnt, punah agamanam kutaha. When will you ever come back? You won't come back. So have a fun. This is what the Asura taught as well. Asuras also taught, he went and taught all the Asura this, which is probably 90% of the world. Virochana is the leader of 90% of the world. So body is all you need. Enjoy your body, live for pleasure, And he was very satisfied with the teaching of Prajapati. And the asuras, we know, lived their life reveling in sense pleasures, doing everything to the body, keeping the body alive, plastic surgery, everything designer wear. They had a nice time with all of these things. But Indra, that is what distinguishes devas from asuras. What was Indra, although he went off happily, on the way back, he was different from Varochana. He realized that something is wrong with the teaching. What he has learned about Atma cannot be right. He felt uneasy, uncomfortable. Something dissatisfied him with the teaching. The water reflects the face and the body. But what if the body dies? Where is my reflection? That was his question. What happens to my reflection when the body dies? How can this physical body or the reflection be said to be deathless Atma? That is the question he had in his mind. So he went back to Prajapati, probably in fear. Oh, am I doing the right thing going? But after inquiry, he goes back. There is a time for questioning, and it is a tradition of questioning and clearing doubts as well. There is always a time to ask proper questions, and if there's a doubt, the guru will always clear. But he goes back to his father, not his father now, his guru, Prajapati. He says, Lord, I don't see anything worthy in this body or the reflection. I think, this is not the knowledge that you want us to take back with us. Please give me the true knowledge about Atma. What is Atma? Prajapati gave a big smile to Indra and he asked him, he didn't give him immediately knowledge. What did he say? Stay with me another 32 years, do seva. 32 years, another 32 years. This Lord Indra had to do service to Prajapati to get the next bit of wisdom. So these days we won't have students at all if we make anyone do this type of thing for the knowledge. So this is the attitude that, in those days, how one approached the teacher. There is a reverence for the teaching. And of course, the end of the story is that, that Indra does get the knowledge. So we'll see that. But when you go to a teacher, there is another saying, Rikta Panir na pashyeta rajanam devatam guru. Never go empty-handed to see a king. Never go empty-handed to a temple. Never go empty-handed to a teacher. And never let a child even leave. The verse goes on to say, if a child comes to your house, don't let a child leave without something, or even a friend leave without something. So it is very important, this never to go empty-handed as well to see a teacher. So just to summarize this, teaching is needed. Shraddha becomes a very important quality to develop. Attitude towards the Shastra and the communication of the words and the words themselves. It tunes your mind to the teacher's frequency. Your buddhi should be tuned into the teacher's buddhi. That understanding, that assimilation should take place, because the whole idea is that the teacher's vision should become your vision. That is how it's transmitted. And that only happens when the dry twigs of the ego are thrown into the fire. When that happens, definitely the frequency is there and the knowledge takes place.